Welcome, everyone. It is good. There's Bailey. She just popped right on there right away. That was one of the first ones. Bailey, good to see you here. Good to see everyone. So while we're waiting, I'm in my LSU attire. Who wants Ohio State? I can't pick Texas tonight because that's an SEC team. So that's no good for us. That's not good for John or Preston. Actually, they're both SEC guys too. So, anyways, great to see people rolling on. Love it. We got 460 people in the first 30 seconds that are on here ready to rock. War Eagle, here
There
come the
you go.
chat. Oh,
There you
we've
go.
got we got War Eagle, SEC, Ohio State. Yep, Craig, I got Ohio State tonight for sure. Who said that's unfortunate for you three? My best friend sells premium seats and seats for the game. He needs Texas to win it to hit his goals. Ha, Chase, that's good. Oh, let's see. But it'll be a good game. You go Irish. Stefan, that was a good game. Preston and I were texting last night. That was fun. Scott Patello. Oh, here we go. We got people that are just jumping in. What would TCPA fines pass LLCs and go to individuals? Hang tight, folks. We'll be jumping in. DC. What's up, easy? Woo Pig Suey. I think that's Arkansas. Gators. Sacramento. Yeah, Sacramento. You guys are kind of just Sac State, I think. That's okay. Go Irish. Brian Curtis.
Does
Yep.
Sacramento have football?
Sacramento State. That's where Cataboo, that kid from Arizona State,
Yeah,
that's where he started and transferred from.
that's right. Yeah,
That kid was something.
yeah,
Nothing,
dude.
nothing like the money in the networks coming into play to make sure that targeting call didn't go through on Texas.
Yeah, I
Good
think that's
morning.
the only one. They were the only one that didn't see it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
exactly.
The networks and the advertisers. Gators, Pokey. Oh, Pokey, is that a Virginia team? Oaks. Hokies. Is that? I think it's a Virginia team. But anyways, we're Buffs. Yeah. Okay. Good. Awesome. Preston, take us in. In the appreciation of everyone's time and people are rolling in right here, right now. Let's do it.
Yeah, man. So yeah, thank everybody for being here. One of the things that John and I, we're partners in several different businesses. But one of the things we launched about a year ago was Easy Home Search. I really been working on it for about 4 years. And when they passed the TCPA changes the end of last 2023, it was something that I dug into and we continue to dig into because obviously we're a lead generation platform and we partner with teams and companies and counties across the country and ours is already built one-to-one consent because we only partner with one team, one company in the county. One of the things that in the last quarter of last year we started focusing on was Easy Verify, and there was just so much out there around TCPA. There's so much being shared that's not true from people that shouldn't be sharing on social media. So that was a big reason why we put this together. We at the end of last year we hired Troutman Amin, which John Henson's one of the attorneys there, and wanted to get him on and kind of do a Q&A. We have some questions, but as it's going, just throw other questions in the Q&A, and I'm going to tackle those as we go. John's going to read off. I think there's 13 total questions.
Yes.
John's going to.
Oh, Preston. Oh, we lost him. Well, if we keep him lost for a while, John, I'll just let her rip.
Okay.
Preston, do we have you back? Maybe not. Anyways, well, ladies and gentlemen, I'll pick up where Preston left off. First of all, I just want to champion what he said. We're here to bring solutions forward to people in an industry that, I've been in now for 37 years, and my family's in it, and it supports all of our families. And certainly we bring services, but we want to keep people informed. We want to be out front. And I think currently right now, one of the things that, and just so you guys know, is certainly to bring that value and that education to you. But one of the things that Preston didn't mention is in Digital Maverick, and this isn't about promoting that, but just letting you guys know where we're at in this thing, not just with Easy Home Search. I'm guessing right now, and he's popped back on, in Digital Maverick through our VAISA company, am I underestimating saying right now that we are We're in 80-ish different top team databases that consist of is a total of 5 million leads across 80 databases. Is that a good guesstimation that our VA ISAs are in operating in every day, Preston? Is that fair?
Yeah, about, we have one database, it's about 1.6 million leads. And I don't know where I got cut off. I guess Colorado internet doesn't work too well here. So, uh, but we're in about I don't know the exact number. It's probably more than that. And then obviously with Easy Home Serve, we generate about 20,000 leads a month for our partners across the country. So, obviously compliance and this is a big part of what we're doing. We want to make sure we're compliant, but also, and I don't know where I got cut off. So,
It's all right. We,
yeah,
we
yeah,
just, we just brushed you
yeah.
aside and said, I got this. We're rolling.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Yeah. So, that's why we brought this forward because there's so much shared on social media that's inaccurate, and, the one thing I do want to share, and I don't know if I got cut off from that standpoint, John Cheplack and I are not attorneys. So do not take this as legal advice. John Henson is an attorney, but he's probably, or he might be some of the, people on here's attorney through Troutman Amin, but just understand this is not legal advice. So whatever you hear here, just make sure you get it verified with whatever attorney that you do use.
good. Awesome. I'll jump right in. And really what Preston did and took the time is certainly there's many conversations with our 150 plus counties that Easy Home Search is in across the country, those clients that are in a community with us, and then the 80-ish top teams that he's working with, their VA ISA, and then my team leaders that I coach one-on-one in our group environment. So we grabbed 12 or 13 questions here, but certainly Preston may grab out from um, the chat there. So let's jump in. So John, what is
Yep.
TCPA, and what are the dates we need to keep in mind for compliance in 2025?
Yeah. So TCPA is Telephone Consumer Protection Act. It has two basic parts, right? It has what we call the regulated technology part, which deals with auto dialers, pre-recorded messages, things of that nature. The other side is the D&C side. Okay. So you've got to solve for both of those to do telemarketing calls. Now, the key things that we've looked at over the upcoming year is in January, at the end of January, there's a one-to-one consent rule, which means if you're on a lead form or any type of consent form, that consent has to be one-to-one to the end seller. Okay, so we can't go for what we've seen, over the last few years, those hyperlinks on a web form to a partner list that's got 2,000 names of partners on there. That's not going to be sufficient anymore. The consumer needs to one-to-one consent to talk to Preston, to talk to John, to talk to so forth and so on, right? That's the big one that's coming down at the end of this month. The next one, and we may get to this one as well, is in April, there's a rule change around the revocation of consent. So TCPA requires consent from the consumer for marketing calls, for our purposes here today, for you to send them a marketing call or text message. That consumer can then revoke their consent and say, stop calling me, stop texting me. And those revocation changes are coming in April. Two quick things before we get way too deep into this. Anytime I say call today, assume I mean or text, because under TCPA, they're treated the same. And then again, Preston already gave my disclosure about I'm not your personal attorney. So again, not legal advice, but those are the key things. So we're talking about regulated technology and how these rules affect that. Do not call and how these affect that. And that these calls or text are all going to be governed for marketing purposes under the TCPA.
So,
Go ahead,
John, let
Preston.
me hop in there real quick. This is one question I think it's important that came in through the Q&A. And I know the answer, and I didn't want to answer it in Q&A because I want everybody to hear it. What corporate structure can protect individual from TCPA fines if they happen? Does it matter that what name you're signing up for actual leads? Should that be a corporation?
So that's a good question. So TCPA has, so you want to sign, the entity needs to get consent. Okay. So we'll say John Henson Real Estate Agency LLC. you need to get consent for John Henson Real Estate Agency, LLC, to call a consumer. Okay. Now, TCPA is an interesting statute because it also has personal liability in it. Okay. So even if the LLC has consent, that's good. But if you have an LLC and you violate the TCPA, you can be personally liable for those violations. So it's not a complete and total shield to violations.
Yeah. So, and the one thing I've seen shared is, you know, I could just bankrupt the LLC or the corporation and I'm safe, but that's not true. TCP is one of the few regulations that they come after you personally.
Yeah. So there's a case from a few years ago that a gentleman was running a call center through an LLC. He died. They went after his daughter as the heir to the property for TCPA violations. And she was looking at like I want to say it was like a $1.5 million fine for the actions of the LLC of her dead fathers. So it is not a statute to be taken lightly, unfortunately.
Wow. If a consumer opts out of phone or text communication, does it also apply to emails and social messaging?
That's a great question. So under TCPA, it would not apply to emails, right? So now you would have to have separate processes for email under canned spam, all that kind of stuff, right? And we have clients who are doing a couple different things. We have some clients who are saying a stop, like if I text a consumer and the consumer comes back and says stop, right? They will take them just out of text or phone calls. We have other customers, clients who go very conservative and stop all communications, but until they, including email, John. So in that case, it's a risk tolerance, but under TCPA, it does not apply to emails.
What constitutes an auto dialer under the new TCPA guidelines, and how can we ensure our systems comply? What's a robocall or voicemail drops considered a robocall?
Yeah, so that's a great question too. So let's talk about auto dialers because that's a big deal. Everything is a spectrum, right? And Preston's heard me say this before. So on one side, you have, let's call it a rotary dial phone, okay? On the other side of the spectrum is a power dialer that's generating random numbers and just calling them out, right? So I like to say the closer you get to a rotary dial and more human selection, more your own list, right? That is closer to a safe system to use. The further you get away from human selection, the riskier it becomes. And because of the way the statute is written and the definition is written and courts have interpreted it, there are scenarios where a system that you think could be safe is not, because the statute says a system has the capacity to randomly generate or store numbers. Doesn't mean you have to use it, just means it has the capacity to use it. So that's what you want to make sure that your dialers do not have that capacity. And like we've seen some companies have completely rewritten their code base to remove that capacity to have a TCPA safe dialer. So that's the kind of thing we want to make sure we're looking at when we're looking at dialers. Are we randomly storing or generating numbers? Obviously, random number generation is risky. I mean, as you can assume. And the storing is the part that what is the capacity there to do? Those are the two things you want to look at. And again, the closer we can get to human interaction and human use here, the better we are in the long run, generally speaking.
I'm going to pop off our list here real quick, Preston, to go into the chat because it's one that I had too. And I know it's going to come up with team leaders. So as a brokerage or team leader who has agents under you, are you responsible for the actions of the agents, independent contractors who violate the TCPA with their own database?
Yep. So when we build out compliance programs, and that's a great question, what I like to tell people is a compliance program, you're setting up guardrails, right? And so in this instant, you're the team lead or you're running your brokerage and you've got guardrails for behaviors of the agents, right? What you want to be able to say is that if you have an agent go rogue and get outside of those guardrails, then you're saying, hey, look, I know this agent broke the rules. It's clearly outside of the guardrails for how this brokerage works. Therefore, you can't hold us responsible. So you want to make sure, again, I understand I've been in real estate for 15 plus years at this point too, right? So I understand that there's a line of control, right, that we don't want to overstep because our agents are all independent contractors. But there is you can create systems and guidelines for that to make sure that they're not overstepping those bounds. And if they are, you can point to them and say, this is a rogue actor going, and therefore not bring liability to the brokerage.
Just to really drill down further, do the changes only affect auto dial and robocalls, or does it affect manual text and call?
It's a great question too. So the actual change is in the definition of prior express written consent. Okay, we won't go through that definition, but marketing calls without prior express written consent using regulated technology are prohibited. Okay, so if you're not using an auto dialer and you're just using your phone, right, and you're just going to dial in the numbers there, that is not affected by this rule. Okay, now again, the further we get away from this and we get into big dialers, that is a problem. The other thing you have to worry about though is the DNC side, the do not call list. Especially if you're doing a campaign, right? You want to make sure that you've got some sort of consent. It may not be prior express written consent, right? But that the consumer has said, I want to talk to this person, right? Or I want you to call me. I like to explain it like this, John. On the DNC side, you want to avoid WTH moments, right? You don't want the consumer to be like, why the hell is this person calling me, right? They should know why you're calling them, right? And if you can get that, that goes a pretty long way there, right? It's those, like bluntly, we have told clients that if you have been buying cold list, you're going to have some problems from both a DNC perspective and potentially a regulated technology if you're using an auto dialer, right?
Good. Let's go into the timelines for reaching out. Assuming the lead came in from an opted-in website registration with a compliant disclaimer and form, what are all those different timeframes that look like?
Sure.
Or also both, as you have been doing, which is great, DNC and non-DNC.
Yep. So that's a great question. So the hard and fast rule in the TCPA is under DNC, what we call an inquiry exemption, meaning the customer has reached out, raised their hand, they want to learn more. Okay. That's 3 months. So let's call it 90 days. Okay. You've got 90 days to contact that consumer. And assuming that they don't do anything else, it's probably done. Okay. The other thing on the regulated technology portion of TCPA, right, is there's no timeline. But from a risk perspective, we still give guidance on that 90-day window because of just the amount of churn in reassigned numbers, right? So if John gives me his number as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And I've called him over 90 days and I haven't been able to connect with him or build that relationship, I don't know that he still has that number. And I'm taking a risk every time I have him call it, just because people do change numbers a lot, right? So that's one of the areas that not only from a DNC perspective, But from just a regular business practice perspective, it does drop your risk down.
So I want to jump in on that too. On the reassigned number list, I was reading, I don't know how many webinars and articles and everything I've read to this point that you guys put out, because, you know, through TCPA world, there's a ton of good information. The regulator numbers, one of the things you share or y'all have shared is look up as once somebody comes in as a registered lead, you know,
Yep.
that have opted in, go to that 60-day window and start running that number against a registered, you know, that number. And then is it every 30 days you mentioned after that, or 45 days?
Yeah, the DNC list is 30 days. And so we always say 30 days for the DNC. And there is a reassigned number database. And if you're using that, 60 days is a good good rule of thumb there.
Yeah, just so everybody knows, because there's about 100,000 reassigned numbers is it every day?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an amazing amount of numbers.
Reassign 100,000 every day. And you have, whenever you look at the reassigned numbers too, not to dive too deep into that, but 45 days waiting period, and then that number can be assigned to somebody else. And there's one that y'all talked about. It was a case in Florida where a lady was buying those reassigned number cell phones and suing people that came in through that number.
Yeah. And that's a great point. Yes, that did happen. And I think what some people don't realize about TCPA, and I didn't realize it really, I was in house at lead generation companies before coming to Troutman. Before that, I didn't realize there is a large amount of people who their entire job is TCPA lawsuits and suing companies for TCPA. And the reason being is because the statutory penalties for TCPA is $500 per call or text and up to $1,500 per call or text. So again, if you're doing let's say 100 calls a day at 1,500 calls, I mean $1,500 a call, that adds up to real money, right? So that's why you have so many plaintiffs that this is their job, that they just go out and sue companies. So,
and they could go back how many years on those calls?
4, I believe.
3 years. Yeah.
Woo.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, it piles up quick, and then you get to the situation, if it's in California and it's a recorded call, it's all of a sudden it's what, $5,000 per call?
Yep.
Lindsay, with DJ Lindsay, a new career might be in my future. That's really good. Next one, John. How should you're sitting down with one of these, and we've got some really big operators here, 1,000, 2,000. We've got 6-figure databases, 7-figure database people sitting here on the Zoom, which is really, really great. How should they handle their databases right now, between now and their existing leads, between now and January 27th?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So January 27th, the rule is going to change, and it's going to say to make a call, you have to have that one-to-one consent. Okay, so what does that mean for you guys in your existing database? Some of your existing database, you already have that one-to-one consent, right? Because you've either talked to them, you've met them, they're a client. So that are covered. If you are buying a lot of shared leads, right, then you need to understand that without doing anything else, those shared leads as of January 27th, excuse me, you don't have consent to call that, right? So how do you fix that? You've got to think of a way to re-engage those customers, right? Whether that's email, whether that's text, to get them to re-engage and give you that one-to-one consent, right? We're seeing those are probably the 2 most used avenues that we've seen for our clients, only because they're the most scalable, right? It's easy for me to go send out 10,000 text messages. It's easy for me to send out 100,000 emails, right?
So is a response to a text message an opt-in?
Depending on the language of the text message, right? So you'd want to say, hey, Preston, want to make sure that this is still a good number for you, and I can still contact you with marketing text messages. This is still a good number, right? If they say yes, great. If they say no, or they don't say anything, then you raise the question of, okay, then what do we do with this, right? So that becomes a risk analysis. Are you okay? Are you comfortable that you've got the one-to-one consent already? Do you know that this lead came from a shared situation, and that you don't have one-to-one consent? So you've got to be able to identify those in your database.
This one keeps coming up, John. I'm going to throw this out there as
Yeah,
well.
please.
One of the things that a lot of people are asking, there's the companies out there, the lead aggregators that sell the lead 30, 40, 50, 60 times.
Yep.
Zillow and Realtor.com have shared leads still. And they're probably going to continue to sell shared leads until January 27th. I would guess.
Yep.
The one thing that I think is important for people to understand is whenever you're buying leads from a company, you need to take the time to interview them. Make sure you read the disclaimer that they're sharing. If you have an attorney, share that disclaimer with your attorney, because just because you got that lead from somebody else does not mean you're protected.
Yep.
Like if that lead comes in and it's a shared lead and you thought it was an exclusive lead, then you could have a problem.
Yep. Yeah. And I've seen a couple questions pop up, so we'll do some quick definitions real quick, right? So a shared lead is going to be any lead that is not exclusive to you, right? So if you're buying from Zillow and they're selling it to John and Preston and John, right? That's a shared lead. You don't have one-to-one consent on those, right? An exclusive lead obviously is an exclusive lead. Like if it's coming through your form on your website and you're the only person getting that lead, then that is a exclusive lead. You probably have one-to-one consent, or I hope you do, on your web form, right? But yeah, Preston, you're exactly right. Like that, you've got to understand where your leads are coming from. And I tell clients all the time that if you're buying leads, TCPA becomes it becomes very important to do what we call third-party management, right? Where are your leads coming from? What are they seeing on their forms, right? Where are they getting their leads, right? You've got to be able to go back and track it. A great example, and again, I know that I'm throwing a lot of scary things at you, but it happens, right? So there's a company called Quote Wizard. They're an insurance lead generator. They were buying leads. They couldn't go back and prove where those leads came from, and they're looking at a $450 million judgment. So you've got to be able to go back and understand where those leads are coming from and trace it back so you understand how you, as the real estate agent, can contact and treat these customers.
Here's one close to, I got to interject this one, and Press will know it's close to my heart. How about peer-to-peer calling, dialing? These team leaders, broker owner managers are calling recruits, fellow
Yep.
independent contractors in the same industry. So how about recruiting calls?
Yeah, recruiting calls that's a good question. So TCPA is Telephone Consumer Protection Act, right? So it's supposed to be for consumers. The problem is it was written before cell phones, right? And so now we're trying to figure out how to get these, how does it apply to cell phones? The risk with the B2B calls is, in theory, they should be exempted. But it's up to the caller to prove that this cell phone is for business use only. That's very hard. That's very hard to do, right? So I know that I can call John on the white phone, and that's a business phone. I can call him on the bat phone, and that's his home phone, right? Or his personal phone. So we like to say that you want to treat cell phones as consumer phones, right? Now, what does that mean for you? It means if you're going to be doing it on a mass perspective, get that consent, right? But a lot of agent recruitment is not necessarily going to be on a mass perspective. It is a lot of, hey, John, it's John, right? So that works in your benefit there, right? But we have clients that are in the B2B space and they're doing B2B at a massive scale, and we always tell them to do get that consent language.
How about for sale by owners, expired listings, circle prospecting?
Yep. So there is some risk there, right? Because you don't know if you've got, especially if you're going to go put them into a system and dial out of that system. But if you're just driving and dialing, right? Oh, there's a FSBO. I'll just go ahead and call that number, right? Like you can use that. There's some risk, but it's going to be very small, right? I would actually also argue that if you've got a FSBO and your cell phone number on a sign in your yard, you're somewhat inviting phone calls. And that's not necessarily marketing, but that's if you're a client at that point. But so know that there is some risk, but it is somewhat small.
One question here, is consent is asking for consent of violation via text or call. And that's one thing I want you to talk about is the call, like these live transfers.
Yep.
Talk about how if that's consent or if that's not. Like if you have a live transfer call, it comes in, can I call them back?
Yeah. So just to level set, consumer inbounds calls to me, right? And I transfer it to you. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the issue is that transaction, there's no problems, right? Because it's an inbound call. The consumer has agreed to be transferred to Preston. Preston can talk to that consumer. Now, it is at that point that Preston has to get some sort of consent to call back, right? And there's a couple different ways you can structure it. Obviously, there is the way that Preston saying, hey, I'm going to text you something and just want to confirm that you get it. Is it okay if I text you at this number? And it's that consent language. Email, same way. Also, you could say, hey, to continue this transaction, is this a good number to call you back at? Right? Now, the risk with that is you want to call them back about that transaction, right? You don't want to call them back and necessarily put them in your system and start putting them on a marketing cadence that you're texting them every 3 days for the next 120 days. So it becomes, there's a transactional portion of this and there's a marketing portion of this. Your risk is lower if you stay on the transactional side before you get that consent.
There's a couple of people didn't understand the expired circle prospecting part. So if I if I download a list and upload it into Mojo, which is a triple line dialer, 5-line dialer, whatever it is, is that a problem?
I'm going to say that is going to be closer to the automated dialer side of the spectrum, right? So there is some inherent risk there. Now, there is also a argument to be made that those aren't marketing calls, right? But again, none of this is legal advice. Contact your local legal professional. But there is an argument to be made that those are informational calls, and they would only need prior express consent, not necessarily prior express written consent. So if I'm thinking about that situation on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being 0 risk and 10 being lots of risk, that is a 6 to 7. So I mean, it's not without risk.
And people keep asking about Follow Up Boss, and obviously you don't know all the CRMs.
Yep.
But a lot of this is up to the interpretation of the whatever judge or whatever court it is, correct? As far as what CRM is and is not?
Yeah, it is. And we're so our firm, 90% of our business is TCPA, right? From the compliance perspective, which is what I do, to the litigation side. So we know a lot of plaintiffs' attorneys in this space, because we just talked about they're all the same people, right? We are hearing that there has been a decrease in litigation about, oh, this system is an auto dialer, right? We are hearing that after January, there's going to be an increase in it because people are going to take the position that my system's not an auto dialer. And the plaintiff's attorney is going to take the position, yeah, it is an auto dialer, and we're going to let somebody else figure this out, right? So that is going to be an increase there. Again, the closer you can get to that human selection and with no randomization, the better.
Yeah. And the one other question that popped in, and then we'll go to the next one John can take. What about the AI dollars? And I know that was something that came up last year.
Yeah, so the FCC has said the use of, I'm going to take two different things here about AI. One is the use of AI voice. Okay, so you leave an AI voice mail. The FCC says that is a artificial voicemail, and therefore you have to have prior express written consent. Okay. The second piece of that is AI dialers, where you answer the phone and you talk to an AI. So, my opinion, that's also artificial voice. The FCC has a new proposed rule. Okay, it's not the final rule yet, it's proposed, and they are going to require a disclosure on the consent language, like we've been talking about, but then an additional disclosure on the call. So you've got to agree to an AI voice call, and B, listen to an AI disclosure. I think you're going to see a similar thing come down from some states as well. But that is out there currently in a proposed rule, not final yet.
And that's,
I think, go ahead. I was just going to say, I know that I've been in a lot of conferences where I've seen a lot of AI dialing platforms, and they're all saying, oh, this is going to be compliant, this is going to be compliant, except like they have no idea whether it is or not. And there's a lot of risk, I think, right now, if you're going to base your entire outreach strategy on those, because we're looking at a world that by the end of the year, the FCC says, no, you're not doing that.
Yeah, and the one thing to talk about on that too is because one of the recent podcasts y'all had, it was talking about a lawsuit with Domino's, and it was around, they called in, they used AI technology to take the actual order, did not let the caller know that, and then continue to use that AI as a way to continue to build their system.
Yes. Yep.
So that's what you're talking about. Is like you have to let them know that it's actually AI voice call.
Yeah. And I will say that AI, the FCC has even said that if you're using AI on the back end that's not interacting with the consumer, that's not a problem. But anytime there's just an elevated risk anytime you've got an artificial voice talking to a consumer.
Yeah. And what is somebody's asking the podcast that y'all have?
Yeah, we have a podcast. It's called Deserve to Win. The single best source for that is going to be tcpaworld.com. We post on there multiple times a day about tons of TCPA information. We're currently in a period where we're sending out a bunch of free information. We sent out today a one-page lead gen checklist, and actually I'll send that to you right after this call, Preston, so we can send out to the attendees. So you've got that on there as well.
Yep. Yeah, it's been a great source. I've actually replaced my workout tunes in the morning with TCPA podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, I'll, as a side note here, this is partly why, and by the way, we've proven it, and people that are being compliant. Your email is passe. Let's just do an email thing. If you're compliant in email, you will sell the daylights. We have proof over and over and over, period. This is outside of the, what we're here focused on. But I just want to let you know from a business building perspective and warming up your audience and lowering their guard with love. And most of y'all here probably know me. I call it straight. Most of y'all don't even know what emails are being sent. They're 17 years old and they don't warm up your audience. So as a side note, go all in on email. We're proving it over and over and over again. People that have doubled their business just on being obsessed in their email. And Preston knows. He's seen it. We've got multiple clients. So that's just a side note. Let's see here. You talked about the importance of vetting the third-party lead providers. Let's see here. I think you went into this, but I want to go back to it. So someone opts in a lead that just registered in your website. The lead says not interested today, but we ask via text if we can contact them in 3, 6, and 9 months, and they say yes. Can we contact them via text or phone?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And that also kind of, John, will lead us into that revocation conversation we were having, right? So the SEC's new rule in revocation is a reasonable revocation has to be honored, okay? And most people are doing that, by the way, right? If I text you stop, you're going to take me off the list. If I text you, hey, I don't want any more text, you're going to take you off the list. Now, the question is, what happens when the text says, oh my God, you guys send so many text messages, right? That's not a revocation, in my opinion. I would argue that's not a revocation. That's just a statement, right? Same thing with, I'm not interested right now. Okay, great. Like, I'm not interested right now doesn't mean you won't be in 30 days, 60 days. I don't know that I would tell you to take that off your list. Now, there is some ways that you can go and you can confirm with the consumer whether they want to be taken off the list or that. But to me, a text that says I'm not interested right now is not a stop. That is not equivalent to a stop, because that consumer could have said, I'm not interested right now, take me off your list.
So I'll say that Travis Halverson is cheering somewhere right now, because that was a big question he had. He works with us. He's with me here actually. He just posted he's hyped because that was a big he sends out these hundreds of thousands of emails or texts a month, and that's a big response, is not interested. And we live in a market where that a lot of people, Myrtle Beach is seasonal, right? Like a lot of people are looking 6, 8, 9 months, 10 months down the road. And a lot of times they'll say, we're not interested in right now.
Yeah. Now, what we have told some clients too is in a scenario like that, if you can, flag that person, pause them, don't keep them in your regular cadence, but come back to them in the future, right? So we have clients doing that all the time. We also have clients who, if they're getting something that's outside of the norm, like, oh my God, you guys send so many text messages, that they would pause that person, review that language, right? And then if not, if they don't think that that's a reasonable revocation, then put them back in the cadences, right?
So on a text, say I send a text message out to get them to opt in originally.
Okay.
They opt in. How often do I need to keep that opt out language in the text message I send after that point?
That's a good question. It somewhat depends on your platform. If it's sending a new text, right? So you're not necessarily using the same short code or to DLC, right? Then probably every time. But if it's a continuation of the conversation, probably not every time.
Okay.
And a lot of times your platforms will determine that.
I think I think somebody like Twilio, I think, is determining that. I think they're doing that now every 30 days, or requiring a reminder of an opt-out message.
Yep.
A lot of that, and that's what a lot of people need to understand. It's not, a lot of this TCPA is not requiring, it's the software that you're using is requiring it, because they want to cover their ass, because Twilio has been sued quite a few times through TCPA violations.
Absolutely.
Yep. John?
Yes, you bet. What would constitute an EBR, established business relationship?
That's a great question. So, EBR definition, generally speaking, is a voluntary two-way communication in which the consumer expressed some interest in the service being provided, right? So, a form, filling out a form and submitting it, that is a voluntary two-way communication, right? That would be an inquiry, like I talked about. There's two types of EBRs. There's inquiry EBR, which is our 90-day window, and our transactional EBR, okay, which is 18 months after the transaction. So in our real estate case, that person, no matter what, well, not no matter what, assuming they don't revoke consent, you're clear on that from 18 months after their transaction, right? So you're good there. And again, that's assuming they don't revoke their consent.
So the 90-day, is that just for the if they're on the DNC list?
Yeah, it's consent. Yeah.
Okay.
And Preston, you have part of this answer. What resources are available for businesses to stay updated on TCPA and DNCA compliance requirements?
Yeah, I mean, that was a big part of this too, is being, being somebody that generates leads for companies across the country. We want to make sure we do everything we can to protect them and protect ourselves at the same time, because if we put our clients at risk, we're not a very good company. So it was important for me to dig into what we can do, like with any registration with Easy Home Search, we verify the email, we verify the name, we verify the phone number, we verify the address. If none of that is verified, we do not pass the lead to our clients. Like, that's something we do on the front end. But in doing that and checking against the DNC list with Easy Home Search leads as well, we built Easy Verify. And Easy Verify right now, it connects with Follow Up Boss. It also connects with Bold Trail. It's we scan against the DNC list in real time. So if a new lead comes in, it'll flag that lead. It'll start a 90-day timer inside of Follow Up Boss that you could try to get that consent. And it'll continue to do more things. Like, we're adding litigators to it. We're adding, the phone numbers. So it'll check those new phone numbers, or the phone numbers that have been changed. That's something else we're going to add to it as well. But yeah, that was the reason why we built it. We want to help protect people beyond the leads that we're generating for them. So they have these databases, and at 500 to, I know a lot of the people on here, I know how much they call, I know how much their agents call. $500 to $1,500 per phone call. If half of those numbers, on average, just to give you an idea, on average, half of the databases we're scanning have numbers on the DNC list. So when you think about that, and this all happens like once you connect it in Follow Up Boss or Bold Trail through an API key, it automatically scans every new lead. It scans your whole database initially, and it continues to update it. It'll actually, if I had my number on the DNC list and I removed it, it would flag it that number was been removed. And it all happens, like I said, it all happens in real time. So that way it makes it easy. You don't have to worry about, because downloading the FCC list and uploading it, they don't make it easy. Yeah. So we do all that for you.
Preston, you want to go to the that's all I've got here. You want to go to the chat there in the bit of time that we've got, or any other questions you've got for John, or anything that John might want to share?
Yeah, I mean, and if, with Easy Verify, if anybody goes there from this call and they put in the coupon code TCPA checkup, they get 20% off. So if you sign up, that initial scan, it reduces the cost by 20%. Well, there's a ton of questions in the Q&A. Let me go through. Can we blast an SMS asking to opt in to our current database?
Yes.
Until January 27th.
7th. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, we have a lot of clients who are currently doing that. Yep.
Okay.
Now they're moving so fast, you got to catch up to them.
Hey, John, if you see something that I don't see, go ahead. Oh, slide dial. So if I'm slide dialing, what is that considered? Meaning it rings your phone, it automatically drops a voicemail and the phone never rings.
Yeah. So if it's a pre-recorded voicemail, you're going to have consent. You have to have consent for that right now, right? So if you are going to be leaving a voicemail and it's a marketing message, then you need consent for that. But again, that becomes whether it's informational or whether it's marketing. But again, like if any time you're going to be dropping a pre-recorded voicemail like that is going to be you're going to need consent. I will say that I've seen a couple of questions about record keeping, and that's a great question. You want to be able to keep the consent records. So if you're buying, and that could be as simple as a field in your CRM. Do we have consent to contact this person? Where do we get the consent? Is it from a third party? Is it from Zillow? Is it from whoever, right? So yeah, you're going to want to keep those for record keeping purposes. We recommend we recommend 5 years because both TCPA statute of limitations and then also the telemarketing sales rule, which is a different beast, but it has a 5-year statute of limitations.
And the one thing too, to expand on that, if you're getting third-party leads, they should be providing this for you.
Yep.
One thing we do, and we're going to offer that where people could do it on their own websites as well. When somebody registers on the compliance form on our website, when they register, we record them actually signing in. So we record that, capture it in a screen recording, capture all the IP information, the name, all the information they share, and we save it on our server for 4 to 5 years.
Yep.
So that's one of the things, like with Easy Verify, we're really focused on, like, what else can we do beyond, like, we're never going to text or call. It's never going to be that surface, but we will help you to get compliant leads that come in through whatever website you're using. So that's third-party vendors should be doing that. So those are the conversations you need to have. Like, can you give me the information showing they actually signed up at this time whenever it's needed at that point? So I think those are something continue on as far as what you ask your third-party lead generators.
Yep. So, I mean, I know we've got like just a few minutes left, but this is a lot of information. And a lot of you are thinking, oh my God, I can never call anybody again, right? And like that's not necessarily accurate. So let's think about just like a couple of things to keep in mind. If you have a personal relationship with the person, okay, call them, right? If you have if you're buying leads from a third party, you need to know what kind of consent you're getting from that third party. And for everybody that you're calling, you need to be thinking about DNC. And what I mean by that is either A, scrubbing against the DNC, or B, making sure you have an EBR with that person. Okay. And if you're trying to do those things, and again, like I'm a lawyer, so the answer is always it depends, but I'm trying to give you some broad things just to be more comfortable about, right? Is if you're handling those things, you're going to be better off than 80% of the people in the world, right? And it's so the flags you want to think about are, again, am I buying shared leads, right? And how do I get consent there? Am I doing cold calling? How can I mitigate some risk there? And I actually think the existing CRM issue for real estate is not as big of an issue as it is for some other industries. But again, maybe just warming all those clients up again, making sure you've got that consent for there. I think that would be that goes a long way.
And the thing to think about too, and I tell people this, when you're thinking one-to-one consent, it's going to be good for our industry because the person or the companies that are selling that lead, I mean, it's crazy, like hundreds of times. A lot of them are selling that same lead hundreds of times. So if you look at that and you're focused on, okay, how can I, whenever somebody registers on my site, how can I do the things to verify the information before they actually register? You're going to get better leads. You're going to have better conversations. There's not going to be robocalls calling thousands and thousands of people every single day. So really, if you just do the things, at the end of the day, they're going to go after whoever's breaking the rules, like the low hanging fruit are who's going to go after, like the ones that are actually doing the things and staying ahead of it. It's going to be harder to sue that. So why not sue the ones that's making it easy, using AI to call 30,000 people a day without any opt-ins?
Yeah.
So whenever you think about it, just do the things you can, make it more difficult. And most likely they're not going to go after you because there's a lot of easier people to go after.
Well, and honestly, this is a oversimplification, but it's very true. I have not seen many TCPA lawsuits that didn't start with somebody being really annoying, right? If you're spamming people, you're asking for it. If you're texting them 5 times a day, you're asking for it. If you're calling them 60 times in a 2-day period, which I have seen, you're asking for it, right? You hate to say treating people how you want to be treated is a good business practice, but it actually is in a TCPA perspective, right? If someone asks you to stop calling them, stop calling, right? So that is kind of the overarching theme, is think about how a cold call would handle your current business practices, right? Like if you call me and I say, hey, I'm not interested, great, and I take you off the list, perfect, right? If I cold call you and say, hey, take me off your list, and I'm like, okay, then I call you 4 more times that day, that's not going to be great.
Yeah, end of the day, I mean, a lot of this will just make it better for the ones that are doing the right things.
Yeah.
Focus on quality over quantity. Really take the time, because a lot of these people are getting so many leads, they're not doing a great job. Like, think of the things that, like John's talking about, email, and really think about what you're sending, right? Or, okay, I have a verified phone number, I have a verified email address, I have a verified address. Let me send them a handwritten letter, and maybe take handwritten letter as part of your prospecting now. Start doing more work than just say, hey, I'm going to automate everything, piss everybody off, and I don't even know what the emails I'm sending. So really look at the things you're doing. And I think in the long run, this is going to be better for everybody.
Yep.
Let me guarantee y'all something. I'm going to go off on the note from a side note, because I get to work with many folks that are on here, top teams doing 500, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. Got a team that just came on that's going to did 5.9 billion last year. We got a pretty good database. Okay. Y'all got too caught up in reading scaling books and leverage books. And I know I've built some pretty decent sized businesses. I write every single email, every one of them. You guys talk to the consumer. Talk to the consumer. I mean, there's two messages here. The compliance, which is beautiful. The other part, I'm watching people win over and over and over again. Us personally in our business, every piece of content you see go from Preston, every single piece of content, no one wrote it. We typed it out. We typed it into our email, and the results are ridiculous.
Yep.
Stupid. Just talk to people.
I was dealing with a client who was getting investigated by a state, and the regulator from the state told me this, John, and you'll appreciate this, said, your problem is you're treating these people like numbers when you need to be treating them like people. And that, I think, is the key to all this. If you're going to treat your clients like people, you're not going to have nearly as much to worry about here.
Yeah. And just always focus on educating.
That's
if you're
it.
not going to read it, just educate. That's it. Educate first. I mean, everybody, how many on here gets John's emails? Just
Yeah, who's on my email list?
do
Still on
25%
it.
of what he does and you'll win.
How many of you guys are on it and still get my emails? Look at y'all. And ready? Watch this. Here's the point. You've gotten emails from me 3 and 4 times in a day too. Okay. And I've got 60% email open rates. Well, guess why that happens? Peck, 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 peck. My little thumbs and my little fingers are the best marketing director that has generated multiple millions of dollars in a year. In a year. So anyways, this is to help you. Anyways.
All right, John, thank you. John, thank you as always.
John, thank you. Appreciate it, man.
John, before they run, if they want to get in touch with you, where can they do that at?
Yeah, the best place to get in touch with me is LinkedIn. I'm very active there. And then the second best place again is our website, tcpaworld.com.
Yeah, yeah. Check your servers. You got 1,000 people on here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And also too, there's a bunch of questions. I don't know. This just came up too, real quickly. Preston and I may have to pop on. Let me ask you guys this real quick. You know, a 15-minute, because you guys are all tagged in the database. If we popped on and took you guys through Easy Verify for 15 minutes over the weekend or something, I'm not saying we will. Would any of y'all like to take a look inside Easy Verify and see what that is if we popped on and just showed you what's going on there? So you can go to the site, but like I'm saying, it might be 5 minutes, 5 to 15 minutes, and we're not going to stay there forever. But Preston, you and I can chat about
Yeah,
that.
it was built to be simple, right? Like it was simplicity. Like everything, everything I always try to build, I try to make it simple because simple's an easy way to make money, right? If you make
Okay.
your system simple, if you make the software simple, everybody will use it. So I could walk you through there. We could also talk about what's coming because there's going to be some compliant form builders in there that's going to verify the emails. And really the goal of it is to how can we build Easy Verify in a way to help people generate better leads and leads that want to talk to you on the phone. And so if we're verifying a phone number, verifying an email before they register, and if that's not verified, they can't register. Well, guess what? You're gonna get less leads, but the leads you have coming in, you'll have better conversations. And that's really what we all want, right? I would rather have 50 really good leads than 200. I mean, that's just the way it is. So yeah, I would love to do that. And
I'll
John,
do this. Three things. John, thank you. I want to honor your time. Let's all give John a big hand and thank him through through the chat there. That's number one. Really want to acknowledge him. Number two, I will be getting a recording. I already halfway through as I was looking down, going to my staff that'll be getting a recording out to you probably tomorrow. Second thing, Preston, I only text 37,000 times a day. So one of our texts is going to be, what's his Saturday or Sunday look like? I'm going to be in the air part of that time flying, but and then we'll just pop on and share with you guys Easy Verify. So John, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. All right.
Appreciate it. Bye.
See you guys.